that. And so they once told me that maybe altogether they went to third grade, right? They got that far. But they were clearly smart and great people, and they were very supportive. And so here's an incredibly lucky episode that happened to me. So when I was a junior in high school, I go to the Central High School library, and I volunteered there after work to put away books. And the librarian tells me, oh, there's this book you might be interested in. And she shows me this really thick paperback made out by the College Board. So this was the first year that the College Board had put together this book showing all the colleges in the United States with little blurbs about them. And she said, you might want to look at that. And I open it up, and I see that for all the colleges, there's a paragraph about financial aid. So I read that entire book from front to back, except I only read the financial aid part, because at the time my grandfather passed away, and so my grandmother and I, our only income was Social Security, right? That was our livelihood, and so I read financial aid, every one, and I get to the end. They're in this first edition, they were in alphabetical order, which makes no sense, but that's how it was. I get to the end, and the one for Yale College is like one of the shortest listings there. And it says basically, we're committed to making sure everyone admitted will get the financial aid they need. This is me. This is where I
You had to read the whole book just to get there.
Well, the next entry was yeshiva, which I thought, well, that's a strange name. But if they'd had that paragraph, believe me, I would have been applying there, which would have been fun too. And so I go to my counselor and I say, well, I'd never heard of Yale. I mean, I associated it with locks. Right, I'd heard of Harvard because of Kennedy, but nobody in my family talked. I go to my counselor, her name was Jean Walker, and she says, that's an Ivy League school. Huh? What does that mean? And she tells me, and to her credit, she doesn't say that's stupid. You're never, why would you be doing that? She says, you know what? You should apply for early admissions this year. Early admission? I know. Okay, so I apply for early admission. I don't get it. So okay. But I'll try again next year because that paragraph, it's really got it under my skin. This is what I need. So apply the next year. And this time, they asked me for an interview. And I'm to have an interview with Dr. John Ferguson. I'm to call up his office and arrange for an interview. And I'm sitting in French class with my friend Dale, and I'm telling him I'm supposed to make an appointment with Dr. John Ferguson. And the French teacher, who was one of my letter writers, Mrs. Fisher, she overhears this and she says, what on earth, why would you go see Dr. John Ferguson? Because she knew, but I didn't, he was an OBGYN. And I, sort of sotto voce, I said, well, oh, well, I know John, he's an old family friend. I used to babysit him. And, well, I'll be calling him. So I'm sure, I don't remember the interview with the man, right? I mean, I don't remember a thing about it, but I'm sure he told them I was, the greatest thing on earth, because I'm sure he gave me as strong a recommendation as he possibly could. And so I got in, and they were true to their word. They sent me, this thick letter with all this financial aid. And so, and they didn't expect my family to contribute anything. Right, so it worked out, and what happened. I have mixed feelings about Yale because I benefited so much. I mean, I'll credit myself with this. I went with the right attitude, right, which is they've made a mistake. Right? Mrs. Fisher got me in, and I'm not going to screw this up. And indeed, Andy, I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know about art and literature and all the sciences. It was, I was hungry. And I went with the attitude is, man, all of these people are smarter than I am. And so I'm just going to soak it up. And at least half of what I learned at Yale, I learned from other students, right? And the first night I'm on campus, you can see what happened. So first of all, I drive. From Springfield to New Haven. It's a long drive, but that's how we go places. We drive. I get to New Haven. It's where am I going to park this car? I can't. I just thought, of course, there'd be parking lots, and And so I find a place in downtown, a garage, and oh my God, this is going to cost me so much money to keep the car here. I got to take it back as soon as I can. And I go up to my dorm room in the old campus, and I meet my 3 roommates. And I know how to be sociable, so where'd you go to high school? And 2 of them tell me they went to prep school. Huh? What's a prep school? They explain that to me, and then they start talking about Phillips Andover versus Phillips Exeter. I don't, you know what? And the third guy, I won't mention the name, but his last name is one of generational wealth that every American has heard, right? So it's like, okay, I'm not in the Ozarks anymore. And then they start, smoking dope. And I've never seen that before, right? I've never been around people smoking marijuana before. And they assure me, oh, the campus cops, they'll look the other way. And I'm thinking, what? And that very summer in Greene County, where I'm from, a judge had sentenced a young man for possession of marijuana, had given him a life sentence.
Whoa. For possession of weed?
This is 1972, and this is the Ozarks, right? Not the same sort of place. So I'm thinking, well, maybe the campus cops would overlook you smoking dope, but I'm not going to give Yale any excuse to send me home. It was like a kid in a candy shop. And because I regarded everyone there as they certainly knew more than I did, all of them. And they were probably smarter than I. It was like, I never felt the pressure to be the smartest person in the room, right? Okay, I'm not, I don't care. I took as many classes as I could, and I always wanted to take 6. You were supposed to take no more than 5 courses per term, and so I would always want to take 6, and the dean wouldn't let me. So I'd take 5 courses and a lab, which is like half a course, et cetera. And I'm just, I'm not getting A's and everything, but I don't care, right? I didn't. So I'm having a great time, and that's when I learned about neuroscience. So first, someone told me, "Oh, look at this course about comparative psychology." What's comparative psychology? It means comparing across species. And I didn't know psychologists studied animal behavior. And then pretty soon, I took a class Linda Uphouse taught, a physiological psychologist taught neuroscience, and I'm hooked, right? I mean, I love this stuff.
I mean, it's been an amazing arc to go from the Ozarks to Yale. I love that when you found yourself in an environment that offered a lot of opportunity, that you seized that opportunity. I think many people wouldn't have done the same had they not had your background, but maybe even if they had. I mean, I think that when you find yourself in a place where there's tons to learn and you throw yourself into that, only good things can come of that. I mean, you mentioned luck, but I think, luck is, I wouldn't say evenly distributed, but it has a habit of finding the prepared, as they say, right? I obviously didn't make that statement.
Right.
So,
right.
And I love this theme of exploration. I mean, I think of you as the hormones and sex behavior, hormones and sexual orientation scientist, right? But I also remember, it was 25 years ago that you always walked very quickly and you always had an idea that you were excited about whenever I'd run into you. So I want to say you've really inspired my career to go after things that interested me and just really follow those trails. And also when it wasn't so clear what to do, to pick the thing that at least was most exciting then and not worry about where that was going to lead next. You strike me as one of the least careerist people I've ever met. And I also acknowledge you've had a spectacular career and it's still going. I mean, your name is synonymous with hormones and behavior and hormones and sex behavior. You're being humble now, but it's absolutely true. It didn't hurt that your last name was Breedlove, if I'm honest. But let's face it, that wasn't going to confer you a real lasting advantage. So clearly you've put in the work. I also really want to thank you for coming here today and teaching people what's known about these topics. And these are not easy topics to parse. The languaging has to be very specific. The reason it has to be specific is in one part political, sort of, but it's really about making sure that people understand what's true, what's not true, and what's not known yet, so that they can form their own ideas. And I really admire the way that you're able to do that. And I also learned a ton today. So, I'm struck by a number of different things in this model of how we become who we are. And as someone who's raised kids successfully and now has grandkids.
Yes, two.
I knew your kids, so that's a trip to me. I haven't seen them in years, but they have kids. I think maybe you would just comment briefly on, did you observe early sex differences in terms of behavior? Was it striking? Did you do experiments on your kids, or did you opt not to?
It was pretty amazing, really, now that you mention it, because Steve Glickman once told me that someone did a study where you ask people, how much do you attribute personality to nature and how much to nurture? And he said the only correlation that came out of it was the more kids people had, the more they thought nature was important for determining. And you know that because if you have more than one kid, they're not the same. And so in terms of sex differences, I'll tell you, so I have one daughter, Tessa, and she had two older brothers, et cetera. And my partner, Cindy Jordan, she's a neuroscientist too, and she almost never wore dresses, right? That would be, or skirt. That was just, not useful around the lab. And there was a period there where every day with Tessa, it was a struggle if we didn't put her in a dress, right? She really wanted to wear, and as soon as she could walk, one of the things she liked to do was to put on her mother's various shoes, right, and walk around in them, cute, et cetera. I mean, she was so different from the beginning. Now, I'm not a biological determinist. I don't think biology is everything. I don't think, prenatal things are everything. There's no one cause of any human behavior. But it really struck me. Oh, and one of my boys could make a gun out of anything, right? We this is an era where we're trying not to.
Even growing up in Berkeley.
Oh my! Well, especially in Berkeley, because he wasn't going to find a toy gun, but by golly, he could make one. And he was also the kid that loved any toy with wheels on it, right? So it was, and even among monkeys, right? Melissa Hines showed it first. Even among monkeys, if you put in wheeled toys, it's the male monkeys that are much more interested in that than the females, and the female monkeys are much more interested in the dolls, et cetera. So yeah, you have more than one kid. I predict you're going to be amazed about how different the kids are, even though you're the same family, right? They don't all come out the same.
Once again, you've been a huge inspiration to me over the years, and I know that the listeners are greatly appreciative of everything you've taught, and we got to get you back here. Oh, also, you're writing a book.
Yes.
About
Yep.
the biology of sexual orientation.
Yep,
I didn't know
trying.
this. We actually don't really do book promos. That's not really our podcast. But when can we expect that book to hit the shelves?
Oh, you put me in such a tough spot. So I'm struggling with it. I've written 6 chapters, and I'm intending to be 11. My goal is, can I get this first draft done by this fall? And then there's reviewing and things like that'll happen. So I do, knock on wood. I'm really hoping I'm going to finish this book, and if so, I expect you, since you owe me so much, I expect you to buy a copy.
Absolutely, I'll buy a copy. I'll read it, and I'll let the world know what I think about it. Dr. Mark Breedlove, thanks for coming here today. Come back again.
It was a pleasure. I've had a great time.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me for today's discussion with Dr. Mark Breedlove. To learn more about his work, please see the links in the show note captions. If you're learning from and or enjoying this podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's a terrific zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please follow the podcast by clicking the follow button on both Spotify and Apple. And on both Spotify and Apple, you can leave us up to a 5-star review. And you can now leave us comments at both Spotify and Apple. Please also check out the sponsors mentioned at the beginning and throughout today's episode. That's the best way to support this podcast. If you have questions for me or comments about the podcast, or guests or topics that you'd like me to consider for the Huberman Lab podcast, please put those in the comment section on YouTube. I do read all the comments. For those of you that haven't heard, I have a new book coming out. It's my very first book. It's entitled Protocols, an Operating Manual for the Human Body. This is a book that I've been working on for more than 5 years, and that's based on more than 30 years of research and experience. And it covers protocols for everything from sleep to exercise to stress control, protocols related to focus and motivation. And of course, I provide the scientific substantiation for the protocols that are included. The book is now available by presale at protocolsbook.com. There you can find links to various vendors. You can pick the one that you like best. Again, the book is called Protocols, an operating manual for the human body. And if you're not already following me on social media, I am Huberman Lab on all social media platforms. So that's Instagram, X, Threads, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And on all those platforms, I discuss science and science-related tools, some of which overlaps with the content of the Huberman Lab podcast, but much of which is distinct from the information on the Huberman Lab podcast. Again, it's Huberman Lab on all social media platforms. And if you haven't already subscribed to our Neural Network newsletter, the Neural Network newsletter is a zero-cost monthly newsletter that includes podcast summaries as well as what we call protocols in the form of 1 to 3 page PDFs that cover everything from how to optimize your sleep, how to optimize dopamine, deliberate cold exposure. We have a foundational fitness protocol that covers cardiovascular training and resistance training. All of that is available completely zero cost. You simply go to hubermanlab.com, go to the menu tab in the top right corner, scroll down to newsletter, and enter your email. And I should emphasize that we do not share your email with anybody. Thank you once again for joining me for today's discussion with Dr. Mark Breedlove. And last, but certainly not least, thank you for your interest in science.